What if events went differently? What if the Venom Symbiote bonded with Steve Rogers and Captain America the First Avenger? What if not only Steve Rogers had his super soldier powers, but what if he also had the Venom Symbiote in him? Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into this Marvel's What If. Steve Rogers has just successfully undergone the super soldier program. As the American officials and Dr. Erskine were glad that it worked out, the assassin Kruger was sent to assassinate the doctor. Erskine was shot and fled with the super soldier serum, promoting Steve to chase after him. Steve caught up to the assassin, but Kruger committed suicide with the cyanide capsule. The rest of Captain America the First Avenger timeline would be the same in this fan fiction, where Steve would tour around the USA as Captain America. In 1943, while in Italy, Steve heard that Bucky Barnes' unit was MIA in a battle against Jonah Schmidt's forces. Steve decided to go behind enemy lines with Carter and Howard Stark flying him. As Steve landed in the Hydra division, he defeated the Hydra minions and managed to free Barnes with his teammates. There he met Schmidt, who revealed himself as the Red Skull. Steve was shocked at the sight of the Red Skull and fled. As Barnes and the rest were regrouping the base, Steve entered the forest and saw a bright like meteor crashing into the forest. He told the rest of Barnes' team to immediately evacuate. The meteor crashed near where Steve was, causing him to be unconscious. Steve woke up several moments later and saw that there was some black goo coming out of the capsule. He approached it with caution and the goo immediately jumped onto him. Steve tried his best to remove the goo from himself, but to no avail. The black goo bonded into him. The Hydra soldiers who were still in the base surrounded Steve and started firing at him. However, the symbiote went into a defense position and formed a shield around Steve's current shield. Steve realized that the black goo was tanking the bullets with ease. He then charged and defeated the rest of the Hydra soldiers. Steve heard a voice talking to him and realized that it was the black goo which was talking to him. The black goo introduced himself as Venom, a symbiote from an alien planet. Venom said that as a symbiote, it needs to feed on something, for example, humans, and Steve was disgusted at first, but then he realized that it was thanks to the symbiote that he was not killed by the gunfire earlier. He decided to consume the dead Hydra soldiers as a reward for the symbiote. Steve would revert back to his own self and return to the rest of Bucky's teammates. Over the months, Captain America would help to take down the Hydra forces with Bucky and the Howling Commandos. Where he wasn't in combat, he would kill pretty much every criminal to satisfy the symbiote's needs. Steve was the only one aware of this and didn't know on whether he should tell the others, especially Peggy, about it. He knows that once everyone is aware of the symbiote, they would either want to reverse engineer it or kill him. Steve felt that the symbiote was able to provide an extra defense measure, but at the same time, he felt bad for having to eat criminals. 2 years later, they were assaulting the train carrying Zola in the original timeline. Barnes fell from the train and became the Winter Soldier in the future. However, in this timeline, as Barnes fell to his apparent death, Steve quickly transformed into his symbiote and managed to save him in time. This prevented Barnes from being the Winter Soldier. Barnes was grateful that Steve managed to rescue him, and the other Howling Commandos saw what happened, but decided to keep it a secret as they have their loyalty to Steve. Steve then told Bucky and the rest on what happened with him 2 years earlier and the bond with the symbiote. They told him to talk to Howard Stark and Peggy. Perhaps they might have some advice for him. At first, Howard and Peggy didn't believe him, but then after they witnessed his transformation, they realized that the symbiote was real indeed. Steve told them on how he sometimes has to consume humans, otherwise the symbiote would be crazy and go on a bloodlust. Howard started researching on the symbiote and figured that the urge to eat human brains was driven from a chemical induced by the symbiote. Howard tried to feed the symbiote with different types of food, but failed. Eventually, they found a solution to the human brain, which was chocolate, but Steve needed to consume a huge amount of chocolate in order to satisfy the symbiote's desires. Steve would later attempt to stop the Red Skull from using weapons of mass destruction on the major world cities. Red Skull handled the Tesseract and was sucked into the wormhole. Steve knew that he has no way to land without detonating the weapon, hence he decided to drive the plane into the Arctic. This time, his symbiote was able to shield him and protect him from the damage. The symbiote then swarmed to the surface, where he was removed by Howard later. Thanks to the Venom symbiote, Steve Rogers would continue his relationship with Peggy Carter and eventually got married with her. After Hydra was destroyed, Operation Paperclip commenced, where former Nazi scientists were recruited into the USA. Peggy, who became director of S.H.I.E.L.D. alongside Howard, Steve and Bucky oversaw the recruitment. They managed to filter out the Hydra affiliates and sentence them to life imprisonment, as Steve felt that Hydra would find their ways to corrupt the governments from the inside. The Venom symbiote would continue to attach and bond well with Steve, as Steve's heart was pure. He was still taking in chocolates as a substitute for human brains. With no Hydra to corrupt S.H.I.E.L.D. from the inside and Steve living the life he wanted, everything seemed well for himself. Eventually, Bucky and Peggy grew from an old age and died. Howard wasn't assassinated and continued to live on with his wife. They were even close with Tony and were often visited by Steve. The super soldier serum prevented Steve from aging as in the original comics. Fast forward 70 years later, Steve has aged a little bit but was still the same physical peak as before. Over the years, he has sharpened his fighting skills and with the symbiote. He also had a daughter known as Sharon Rogers, and Sharon would join S.H.I.E.L.D. as an agent. Steve himself would spearhead the Avengers later on in 2012's Invasion. When he knew that Loki would begin an invasion, he convinced Tony to be a part of the Avengers. Out of respect for Steve, who was like an uncle to him, Tony agrees. Tony, Steve, and Natasha would later recruit the other members into the Avengers, like Bruce and Clint Barton. However, none of the recruit Avengers were aware that Steve had the symbiote in him. He merely used his fighting abilities and charisma as Captain America all the time. In the invasion of New York, the UN wanted to drop a nuclear bomb onto New York City, in which Tony managed to throw it into the wormhole where the Chitauri were coming from. In this timeline, Cap volunteered to do it. He figured that at most, the symbiote in him would perish. Tony refused at first, as he felt that Captain America isn't up for the job. Cap then transformed into his Venom form, which shocked the other Avengers. He said that he has kept it a secret for all these decades, and the only one alive who knows about it is Howard Stark. In his Venom form, Tony flew Captain America with a nuclear bomb, in which Cap created a ball of symbiote around the bomb. Cap hurled the bomb towards the wormhole, and it erupted, destroying the Chitauri ship and ending the invasion. Cap in his Venom form saved both of them instead of Hulk, and the rest of the Avengers learned that Cap had the symbiote powers, and he tried not to rely on them too much, as he felt like he is Captain America and not Captain Venom. News of Steve having the symbiote was spread live to the world as they captured the moments where Steve saved both him and Tony, who were falling from the sky. Elsewhere, another meteorite came crashing into Malaysia. Out of the meteor came another symbiote, which was similar to the beginning of the Venom movie. The symbiote went into several hosts before it saw on the TV screen of Steve's heroics with the symbiote. The symbiote said that it was summoned upon the other symbiotes, in which Venom's offspring, which were Lasher, Agony, Scream, and Phase. The symbiote said that it is the leader of the symbiote's children, or also known as Riot. Riot said that it plans to merge all of them together as the ultimate symbiote known as Hybrid to destroy Venom and emerge as the ultimate symbiote. And that is going to be it for this Marvel's What If fan fiction. I didn't want to go in depth into the rest of the MCU history, as I felt that it would be boring, and I really wanted to explore more of the symbiote part instead. Do let me know in the comments down below if you guys want to see a part 2 of What If Captain America had the symbiote. And it was more of a random fan fiction, but I really wanted to do this and see where Steve as Venom would face off, and maybe we could even do Steve facing off against these other symbiotes. If you guys did enjoy this fan fiction, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in and have a fantastic day.